The album is called Otis Blue, Otis Redding Sings Soul, released September 15th, 1965. It's currently 48 on Best Ever Albums of the 60s. It is the third studio album by Otis Redding. Otis Redding was born September 9th, 1941, died December 10th, 1967, 2 years after this album was released.
Oh, damn.
I'll get into a little bit of that later. This is the only Otis Redding album that we'll cover, so I'm going to give him a little bit more bio than normal. He was born and raised in Georgia. He started singing at a young age in church, as well as learning guitar and piano. He sang in the school band in high school. He cited Little Richard and Sam Cooke as influences. He then left school at age 15 to start working to help support his family. He won a local talent contest in 1958 at the age of 17 with the help of a local guitarist named Johnny Jenkins. Jenkins then helped Rich Redding become the lead singer to a band called Pat T. Cake and the Mighty Panthers. He then joined Little Richard's backing band, the Upsetters, when Little Richard transitioned to more of a gospel sound. He then moved to LA in mid-1960 and started writing and recording there. At that point, he signed with a small label called Confederate Records and traveled the Chitlin Circuit in the South. Now, I think we talked about the Chitlin Circuit before, but that was basically clubs that were African-American dominant and accepting of acts and, catered to black Americans in the South.
James Brown, I think the episode where we covered him, we talked about it a little bit.
Yep. Now, Johnny Jenkins comes back into the picture as he was on the same label as Otis Redding, and the head of Confederate Records was looking for, I guess, a bigger label for Johnny, so an Atlantic rep sent him to Stax Studios in Memphis. Now, Johnny did not have a driver's license, so Otis Redding had to drive him to Stax, and that is where Otis kind of gets his breakthrough with Stax. Jenkins was performing with Booker T and the MGs in the studio, but nothing came of it. And while there, Otis was allowed to perform 2 songs. The first one was a cover of a Little Richard song, and then he sang These Arms of Mine as his second song and was signed on the spot to Stax. It was released as a single in October of 1962 on Stax's sister label Volt Records, with that other song he performed as the B-side. It was also released on his debut album, Pain in My Heart, released in March of 1964. His second album was released March 1965, called The Great Otis Redding Sings Soul Ballads, and the summer he then started recording songs for his third album. Now a little bit about this album. This album became one of the most successful albums of his career. It consists mostly of covers with 3 original songs by Redding. The opening track, and then Respect and These Arms of Mine, which we all know. 10 of the 11 songs on this album were recorded over a 24-hour period, July 9th and 10th, 1965, at Stax Studios in Memphis, with a break from 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. to allow local musicians to play gigs. And then I assume they just came back after 2 a.m. and kept recording. Yeah. So that's pretty crazy. Booker T and the MGs were Stax backing band. Isaac Hayes was on the piano for this, and and the horns were members of the Marquees and the Memphis Horns, which are two Stax studio bands.
So you did say I always had heard that Booker T and the MCs were his backing band, right? Am I right about that?
Yes, on this album. Mm-hmm.
On this album, that's right. Okay, yeah. Yep. I'm not crazy. Okay.
Yeah, and another important person on this was Tom Dowd. He was the sound engineer. I'd like to nominate him to the Stax Hall of Fame that we eventually do. He did both John Coltrane albums we've talked about, and both of Aretha Franklin albums, and Dusty Springfield, Dusty in Memphis album.
Damn. He's
also mentioned in the Crosby, Stills, and Nash documentary I watched by the sound engineer who recorded Crosby, Stills, and Nash.
That's some Tom Wilson prominence level right there.
Bill Howerson was the sound engineer. Tom was sent down by the head of Atlantic Records to basically fix what Crosby, Stills, and Nash were doing, or let's say threaten them to fix what they were doing, because the original mixes were not to everyone's liking, and there was more music than vocals in that. And so Tom came down and said, you're going to put the vocals in the foreground because that's what everyone wants to hear, and I take it that I won't have to come down here again and help further.
Don't make me come back.
Yep. So back to Otis Redding. That was Tom Dowd. On this album, we've got 3 original songs by Otis Redding, as I said before, 3 songs by Sam Cooke, who was shot to death 6 months earlier from this album. So I think that was very much on his mind,
damn.
also being an influence of Otis Redding.
We'll be talking about that in a bonus episode that Matt and I did.
We've got a Temptations song, My Girl, written by Smokey Robinson. We've got a B.B. King cover. We've got a Rolling Stones cover, obviously, with Satisfaction. And we've got a Solomon Burke cover and a William Bell cover. You may notice the unusual cover with a nondescript blonde woman who is not Otis Redding on it.
That's not?
No. And that's unfortunately a studio practice of the time. I guess they didn't really want to advertise too much that he was a black artist, and they did that with other albums as well.
Just put like a
Wouldn't,
kind of a
listening to
sultry,
this
sexy
give that away?
blonde.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so weird. Another fun fact, Otis apparently didn't know Satisfaction before recording this song. He had just seen the lyrics provided by one of the guitarists, and he read them through and then performed the song. That's why some of the lyrics that he sings are not the lyrics on the actual Stones version of the record. He kind of just made them up as he went along. Keith and Mick both loved Otis Redding's version of it, though, and didn't care.
Wait. So he decided to do the song just by reading the lyrics?
Yeah. I think that the label kind of decided that he was going to do a cover, or he was interested in some respect, and the guitarist, one of the session guitarists, had like the single of Satisfaction, and yeah, so he didn't really know.
I was going to say, if they just whipped it up based on the lyrics and he came up with pretty much the same melody, that would be pretty amazing.
Oh no, I think on some level he knew.
Somebody knew what the song was, right?
Basically, yeah. I mean, the musicians probably. So this album hit #1 on the Billboard R&B chart. 3 singles were on the Billboard Hot 100. I've Been Loving You, Respect, and Shake. It was critically praised. Angus Taylor from the BBC said it was Redding's definitive statement, and I'll get some post stuff afterwards after we talk about it a little. But how much did you guys like this album?
John, why don't you go?
It's my favorite album we've done so far. It's the new #1 on my... I mean, I love Otis Redding, and like we've done a lot of great singers. Like I mentioned, Matt and I did a bonus episode where we did Sam Cooke, and you'll get to hear how much I love him, and Aretha Franklin, and Nina Simone, Dusty Springfield. This album, actually, in many ways, Otis Redding reminds me a little bit of Dusty Springfield, and that his voice can convey a lot, even when he's doing just standard songs. And this was a remarkably good album. I have a chart that I do where I just evaluate the albums afterwards, and it's like vocals, and it's like 10, music, and the backing band is just incredibly good. The bass lines are awesome. It's very much there, but it's just the right amount of musical accompaniment to not overrun Otis Redding, but also be there and not fade in the background. The emotional connection part of it, which I put in, is 10 out of 10. It's just, he can sing about just about anything. You feel like he could sing the phone book and it would have some sort of resonance to it. It's in many ways, the song selection of the covers is great. Even the songs from other versions. You may like other versions better than it. You may like the Respect version by Aretha Franklin better. You might like the Stones' original Satisfaction better. You might like, What a Wonderful World covered by everybody in the world. I always think of the Sam Cooke version of it, but there's like 5 other ones too. But he may not have the definitive version for you, but every single version of this is slightly different, sung flawlessly. The energy's great. I almost can't really go too much into it because it's the type of album that I would just wonder who you were and what you liked if you didn't like it. Because if you don't like this, we're not going to have a lot of ground that we can cover, and I just don't think you'll like the R&B genre in general, because this is both mainstream and also edgy enough to make it beyond bubblegum music, and that's a real compliment. Easy 10 out of 10, and like I said, of all the albums we've covered so far, it has jumped that Nina Simone album into my #1 spot of albums we've done so far. I love this one.
All right, Matt?
I think this is we're going to be totally 180 on this entire episode, John, because I am not feeling this.
What?
Meet somebody who is not feeling this like you are. Because I cannot. You're saying maybe somebody. First of all, okay. Let me start off. It's not terrible. I didn't hate it. It was fine. Okay.
Fine.
But yes. But the original. Okay. So for me, a lot of this is I can't get past the songs that he does that I know other artists doing that I am more familiar with, that I like those versions better.
Yet you like the Beatles, who do that all the time and have much less positive versions of songs than others. Right. It's just that you like the Beatles versions better than all the others. That has to be the answer for that. Because it's to have that
let me finish. Because I'm telling you about my experience, because I know a lot of those Beatles songs, and I don't think that every Beatles cover is better than the original. I've been listening to them for years. Those are the versions that are stuck in my head. So if that's what I'm used to, and then I hear a different version, if I like that other one better, I am going to not like that original version better, or I'm not going to like that as much. And that's the similar thing here, because Respect to me is an Aretha Franklin song, right? My Girl is a Temptation song. Satisfaction is a Rolling Stones song. So when he does these songs, I appreciate that he's doing them differently, because I think that's, if you're going to do a version of a song that's been done already, and I realize that, Respect is his song, right? So Aretha Franklin's doing the cover there. I like it that you're doing it different, but those other songs have been just in my head for so long that generally I'm like, I like those better. So when I hear these, it's fine, but like I am already starting off at a negative kind of outlook on it, because it's automatically inferior to me, right? So because that's my level of familiarity. So that was just with those songs, like 4 or 5 of the songs, I felt that way, right? The ones that I was very familiar with, I was kind of like, it's not as good as what I knew from the other song. I really liked Down in the Valley. I thought that was probably my favorite song. I liked the piano part with that. And I think some of the songs that I didn't know as much, I liked better. Like You Don't Miss Your Water at the end of that song, he's going nuts and crazy, and that guy needs a drink of water, so somebody help him out. But yeah, it's fine, but it honestly, it wasn't like an Aretha Franklin album, or, we're talking about Sam Cooke. We listened to that as an episode we haven't released yet. I liked that better. It's fine. Yeah, that's what I'm going with. It's fine.
Wow. So I think you don't think his voice and his basically his soul in the songs transcends the covers? 'Cause
he just said he thought You Did Drink of Water is about actually drinking water, Josh. So, that should give you an idea of how it's not connecting, you know what I mean, to greater themes.
I know it's not about water.
We're going to do 6 decades of music over the next 6 years, and I don't know if we'll ever have a worse take from Matt than this take today, Josh.
Hey,
so
my take is my own.
Mark it on.
Well, you can put it up on the YouTube and get more listeners.
It doesn't even make sense from the stand fact. I like songs that are people's and not the originals. But I actually like Aretha Franklin's Respect.
Did you hear a word I said?
Yes, but it's just insane because it's just.
Why is that insane? Explain. Why?
Just so does that mean that everybody? So I've heard you. So does that mean if you stumbled into like a Guns N' Roses cover of Mamakin before like the Aerosmith version, you're automatically going to like that one because that's the one that you know, even if one is much better than the other one?
It's possible, but it's not 100%, right? So it's not always going to be like that. I'm just saying for the songs that on this record that were like that, it pretty much was that, right?
So there's an 18-year-old right now that, somebody might cover like Yesterday by the Beatles, and they'll hear it, and then someone will be having a podcast and say, I listened to the Beatles one, and but I wasn't familiar with that one until this one, so that one has to be better.
It's not an either or, right? It's not like it automatically has to be. It's just that's the frame of that I'm coming from, the frame of reference that I'm coming from. And if somebody were to say that, I would highly disagree, and I'd tell them that probably the same thing that you're telling me, that person's crazy. But I would get it if that is what you are used to, and that is something that it's singed in your brain. And that is what you expect. And when somebody comes and does something different that you're not feeling as much, right?
I gotcha.
Then it's not going to hit you as much, right? So Josh, that's all I'm saying.
I'll defer to you because I feel like I'm on the record here.
what about the original songs on this album, Matt?
No, the songs that I wasn't as familiar with, I liked them better than the ones that I was.
I mean, I guess I'm trying to, I don't want you to feel like too defensive or anything, but I can understand maybe that the covers, you're too familiar with the other covers, or you don't feel like these covers are as good as the original covers. But I feel like Otis Redding is a singularly special talent whose voice and soul that he brings to songs transcends like he could basically do any song for me, and it would be great. Maybe you need to listen to some of his other albums that have less familiar songs too, to kind of, like his album after this has lesser well-known songs, and Try a Little Tenderness is on that as well.
Right. And that's possible. I was thinking, like, I was maybe hoping for more albums to listen to for the podcast, but this is the only one, so I'm not going to get it in that context. But I could definitely try to see if that feeling would be similar or different if I listened to other stuff that maybe I wasn't as familiar with coming in fresh.
I mean, comparing him to somebody like Aretha, though, she did just as many covers as he does on this album. And do you feel like do you feel like the same way about that album or some of the albums that we talked about then?
No, because again, when you're talking about a song like My Girl, right, or Satisfaction, these are like respect. These are classic songs that I've known for my entire life. Yeah. And I've known them one way, and I've liked them all, right? And then this comes along for 40 plus years. That's what I'm listening to. Yeah. And then this comes along, and it's not bad. I'm not saying, he's terrible, he's butchering it, he should just go away. It's not like that at all. It's just going, okay, right? Like I hear his voice, and I hear he's a talent. I'm not disputing any of that. I'm just saying from my own reaction, because I was so familiar with those other things, because I had liked them in that way so much, that within a week of listening to this was not enough for me to go, oh my God, that was a great version of that. It just wasn't.
You're making him sound like Ed Sheeran, though. Like, he's got a pretty good voice. No offense to Ed, but like Otis Redding, as Josh said, is like a singularly talented individual who sings songs that you can listen to R&B. Like, I'm just fascinated if like we get to Marvin Gaye and like Matt here is like, I heard it through the grapevine. It's like, I've heard this song before by CCR. I just can't process that Marvin Gaye.
The difference. Like, that's a good point.
I'm afraid we're gonna have that talk, and then because this is the worst take ever.
No, because the difference there is that I've heard various versions of. I've heard it through the grapevine, right? I've only heard one version of Respect. I've only heard one version of My Girl and Satisfaction.
I just reject that premise. I shouldn't say reject. I can't understand that premise, and it's just mind-boggling to me.
I mean, okay, I don't want to harp on this too much. You've heard Otis Redding songs before, though, right, Matt?
Sure. I think so. Yeah.
I've been loving
Sitting on the dock of the bay. You might have heard that, stumbled across that one.
I do know that. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm okay. I guess you just didn't get played the covers of him young enough to mix in with the other originals that
and it's not like I'm just telling you, it didn't shock me. Like when I heard the Aretha Franklin albums, that was like, holy crap. Like that was just like doors being blown open. It was fantastic. I was in it from the moment. There were parts of this that I liked, that I kind of got to that place, but for the most part, I wasn't there, and that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying this was bad. I don't want to come back to this ever again. But it's not like this transcendent number one album. No way.
Okay.
Do you think because you're not a lyrics guy and you maybe don't know what these songs? I mean, they're not about like complex things, but they're. I'm trying to come at it from a different angle.
It's not a lyrics thing, John. It's never a lyric. A lyric is never really going to make me go from just saying, 0 to 60.
It's just very bizarre to me that you wouldn't feel in your innards like moved by like Otis Redding has like a unique ability to like move the bar for most people, and to hear him, it's like, this isn't just like an R&B singer, right? This is an R&B singer who not just sings the song, but like it embodies the song, and sort of like a great jazz musician, like that didn't to you at all on even songs you were familiar, like Satisfaction. Of course, we know the Stones version of it, but like his Satisfaction, it's like a different type of satisfaction than like what the Stones are singing about. And to me, they're different songs because it's just, you can sing the same words, but they mean different things based on how they're sung. And that's like, yeah, I mean, that's why Mick and Keith like it so much, because they're like, shit, well, this is kind of what we,
His energy is there. The passion's there. Like the emotion is all there. And I'm feeling that and I'm getting all that. And it's great. Okay. I don't know how else to explain it. Yeah. And maybe I need to listen to this. Maybe that's the thing. Maybe if I would listen to this more and try to detach more from that, right? Maybe I would get more into like, oh, okay, now I'm getting it. But I'm telling you, after like listening to this album like 3 or 4 times over the course of the week, I didn't get over that hump.
Listen, so I can't argue with you.
I didn't get over the hump.
Yeah.
But you know what? I would say for me, that's not a fair listen, because 3 or 4, I need to listen to some of these albums much more than just a couple of times to really get it. And I feel like maybe I didn't do that enough here to really disassociate that. But I could not get past that.
I feel like if you're gonna get as much as you can get Otis Redding, like you're gonna get him on listen 1. Like I just don't know how you go, oh, I missed this thing that Otis Redding does in the first 3 times I listened to it, but now I've got it in the 4th. You know what I'm saying? Like, he just isn't an artist like that. To me, it's like, if you just think he's an R&B singer who has a good voice, he's always going to be he's going to be Smokey Robinson to you then. You know what I mean? Like, to me, what
he's better.
Otis Redding is there's a level up from, and this is where maybe you've mentioned that you don't, the R&B end of things, right? You don't have as much of a grounding in it, and maybe as time comes on, maybe there will be the ability to, or maybe it's just is going to be a guy that doesn't resonate with you as much.
We're just gonna have to agree to disagree at this point, because his voice and emotion that he brings to the songs like moves me. Like the first time I hear Otis Redding, I loved him, and I've Been Loving You is like one of my favorite songs of all time. It's probably one of the best soul ballads of all time, and I just like it moves me. It's like one of those songs that affects me that way. And I just love I guess, and seeing him perform too, Matt, is another thing that's good. If you haven't seen him in the Monterey Pop stuff and some of the footage, that might help as well. Or, maybe capture the spirit of him more. But I just love how he almost freestyles these songs. Like, he doesn't need to know. He just goes wherever he wants, and seems like it doesn't matter where the music is, or he just picks stuff up and makes it his own in a way that I think few other people did.
Well, and the respect he's talking about is different. Like the Aretha Franklin respect is, as we talked about, it got repurposed into like a feminine energy, an empowerment anthem, and that was the greatness of what she did with that song. But the respect, like Otis Redding is talking about, is a general concept. Like, it washes over you. You know what I mean? You don't even need to know the lyrics. You could just hear from the way he sings it and the background band. It sounds like someone grasping desperately for respect. I just can't explain it. It's like everything fuses together in these things. They become, satisfaction isn't about the words anymore. It's just about the feeling of satisfaction as he creates it.
And that's just, I don't care. Like, I don't like the different respect that he's singing about. Okay. The different. Don't get mad, dude. I'm just telling you, like the different type. If you're talking about the different type of respect that he's talking about versus Aretha, that's great. That's fine, and I can see that as being 2 different songs. But I'm listening to this as musically, I'd much rather listen to Aretha Franklin's version, and his is fine. If you put it on, I'm like, oh, this is terrible. But I don't know how else to explain it. But that is not going to convince me to change. Like, oh, he's talking about something different. Maybe I'll think differently about the song.
Shares more in common with like Dusty Springfield and Roberta Flack than he does with Aretha Franklin. And I think that's something that we don't talk about a lot too. We sort of like lump all R&B singers together in like the same category, and there's different types. And to me, I wouldn't compare Aretha Franklin and Otis Redding, because even though they're both theoretically doing soul, they're doing just a very, very different version of soul to me. And like I said, this album shares more in common with Dusty and Memphis than it does with pretty much any other album we've done. I'd actually say it is more Nina Simone than it is Aretha Franklin if we're going to go with other albums that we've done. But it's just, as I talked about in the Dusty and Memphis album, it wasn't even about the songs sometimes, even though I liked the content of the songs. It was about the way she sang them and the way I felt. And I don't, from your end, when I say it, like it surprises me because this isn't even, what I'm basically saying is it isn't even about the lyrics. It's about how the music sounds and the evocation of feeling. So it actually more seems to line up with how you do it. But yeah, I mean, it's everybody's different. So I'm sorry to get so defensive. I'll be honest. I was shocked when you said that. I thought this was a home run. That's why I put it as the last segment.
Right.
So
yeah, I mean, he is more like a James Brown to me. He is just so unique.
Which was an album I didn't like as much either, though.
Yeah, but that was a live album. That's kind of different.
That's true.
Really
that
reflective of James Brown. I think you could do a lot better. Yeah.
But
right.
Okay, well, let me wrap up. I have a couple more things I want to say since this is the only album that he has. He was one of the first artists to perform at the Whiskey A Go-Go on Sunset Strip. Bob Dylan saw him perform there and offered him an altered version of Just Like a Woman. In 1966, he recorded Try a Little Tenderness, often considered his signature song, which was included on his next album. He toured London, and the Beatles sent him a limo to pick him up. And he also played in the Fillmore in San Francisco, which was rare at the time. And he toured Europe for 6 months later after that. He also recorded a duets album with Carla Thomas titled King and Queen in 1967. That was a commercial success. He also recorded a live album after that. He then performed at Monterey Pop as the closing act on the second night, June 17, 1967. That was brought him national acclaim, and it was considered a real turning point in his career in terms of national attention. In December of 1967, he recorded Sitting on the Dock of the Bay. 3 days later, on December 10th, he was leaving from Cleveland with his band to play at the University of Wisconsin. The weather was poor with heavy rain and fog. 4 miles from the landing, the pilot crashed into Lake Monoma. The band that was with him was the Bar-Kays, and the only person to survive was Ben Cauley of the Bar-Kays. Everyone else died, including the valet and the pilot. The cause of the crash was never determined, and he's buried at his ranch 20 miles north of Macon, Georgia. Sitting on the Dock of the Bay was released in January of 1968. It became Redding's only single to reach #1 in the Billboard Hot 100, and it was the first posthumous #1 single in U.S. chart history. And he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1989. So that's it for Otis. Short career. That's another thing that gets me is, he was only 26 when he died, and I feel like this album shows how much potential he had that he really didn't get to fulfill for any
and didn't squander. That's I think the greatest thing is that as much as it's a tragedy, some of the other artists, this was one where it's like, almost like Richie Valens, Buddy Holly style. Where
how many total albums did he have? Did you say?
He has
like studio albums, I guess.
It's hard to say though, Matt, because like Otis Redding, like Josh said, is less to be experienced as an album and more as a live performance, and sort of like Sam Cooke too. It's
that's definitely
they were designed to be listened to. James Brown as well. Live.
Yeah, and I think I think that's something to be said too, because I think I've mentioned this before. Like, I could totally see seeing this live would have been insane, right? If he just the way you could tell by his voice, the way he's feeling this, that would be just a kick-ass performance, right? And I think that would definitely, I would be way more into that, and maybe this is just the wrong time for me. I don't know. Maybe it was the wrong week or something, but I didn't dislike it. I would say I liked it fine. It wasn't like this transcendent, like, oh my God, like amazing thing. And I will say, just much like the Kinks version, there's a real long extended version of this on Spotify, and it's got the stereo version, which to me is much. The production with some of these 60s albums is definitely better served with the stereo version if you have the choice. The Beach Boys was kind of like that too. They had like the mono and the stereo
Beach Boys
version.
Is the ultimate example of that.
But like I don't know if you guys listen to both or for either of these albums, but there's mono and stereo for both this and Arthur, and I thought the stereo was considerably better on both.
I listened to stereo on both of the first two albums and mono for comparison, but I I'll be honest, I didn't feel like I didn't know what I was going to gain from stereo for Otis Redding, because I felt like I already kind of knew a little bit of what that was, you know.
It just sounded clear. I thought the production sounds clearer, and not as maybe, I don't know, muffled or something. But anyway,
I mean, he has about 10 total albums. A couple of those were released posthumously, so he was putting out about an album a year. But yeah.